I want to share an experience that I had with you that I just can't seem to shake. I know that young people get kind of a bad reputation for being cynical, pessimistic, and lazy, but I like to think that I'm actually the exception. I like to think that I'm quite positive, and I hope this experience will help demonstrate that. So it's a Monday morning, and I've just come into school for math class. So already, Monday morning, math class, not such a great combination. But I was really just so excited, just ecstatic about this report that I had seen on 60 Minutes. And I'm sure some of you in here will have heard about this, but it was a report about how scientists have discovered this breakthrough treatment, this absolutely amazing breakthrough treatment to cure cancer using polio. They can inject polio into brain tumors, and it's this amazing thing. And what they're finding is that the cancer is just disappearing. That instead of buying people more time, they're saving people entirely. And it's amazing. I'm going a mile a minute explaining this to people, saying, my gosh, the cancer's going to be cured. I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. And one of my fellow classmates pulls me aside and says to me, I think you need to tone it down a little bit. I think just a little bit. You're kind of at a 10, and I think you need to be at like a 3. And my first response was, well, that's not really toning it down a little. But then my second response, my second sort of realization was somebody was actively choosing to be negative in the face of this amazing, wonderful, positive thing. See, like I said before, I like to think that there's a lot to be positive about and that I'm actually really quite optimistic. So I'm a recent high school graduate, and whenever this gets brought up in conversation, inevitably people always ask me, well, what's your plan? What are you doing? And where are you going? And with all different variations. But the one thing that's universal across it all, whether it be talking to people, in the cards that I've read, or in graduation speeches, it always comes back to, well, graduates, we really need you. We really need your minds. We really need your talents. Because we really need you to solve the problems of today. There's a lot of bad stuff in the world. We need you to fix Social Security, save the environment, stop global conflicts, find more ways to feed people, and the list goes on and on and on, and it's really quite daunting. I mean, no wonder someone wants me to be at a 3. But I actually think that while these problems are big, I think we're thinking about them in the wrong way. I think that we're actively choosing to be negative about our country's future, and we're actively choosing to look at these problems in incredibly negative ways when actually there's a lot to be positive about. And I think if we can change the way we look at things, change the way we look at our country, that these problems will actually, hopefully, solve themselves. So let me explain what I mean by that, because I think in order to do that, to look forward, we have to look backward. So I'll explain what I mean by that with a story. And like many great stories, some of the best stories, this one begins on a train. So imagine this. It's the 1940s, and a man sits somewhere on a train in Eastern Europe. The train is dark, it's cold, it's loud, and it's crowded. Armed guards patrol the locked cars, and there's a sense of oppression in the air, a real sense of oppression. And as the man sits there, he thinks about his life, his friends, his family, his job, everything that he had accomplished up until that point. And as he's sitting there, he's thinking about who he is and where he wants to go. And he knows that when the train gets at the station, he doesn't want to be there, that this train is not going to a place he wants to be. And as his mind starts to wander, as he looks outside the window at the rolling countryside, he starts to think about a far-off place. And he'd come to know a few things about this place. He'd come to know this is a place where if you worked hard and you had a dream, that nothing is impossible. He'd come to know this was a place where you could provide a better future for not just yourself, but for your friends and family. So as he's sitting there, as he's thinking about all of this, taking all of this into account, he feels a calling, something rising within him. This new sensation, this thing he's never felt before. He starts to realize that nobody is going to tell him that he doesn't matter, or that his dreams don't matter, or that he is any lesser than anyone else. And as he's sitting there, thinking about his decisions, he decides to make a pretty bold one. He decides to jump off the train. Free-falling between a hailstorm of bullets and obscenities, he crashes into the water below, realizing that by some miracle he was alive, he had survived. But as he leapt from one reality to another, he shed himself of everything that he had had, all of his relationships, everything that was ever material. But you see, even though he had lost everything, he had this one really important thing, and to him, it meant everything. It was this thing that he felt right here, something that had ignited, something that had sparked, something that you can't touch, but you know that it's there, something that I think all of us in this room have felt. He had a chance, something within him that he could go from nothing to something. So if that sounds like the cliched American immigrant story, I'm sorry, but that was a story about my mom's great cousin, Yankel, who in the 1940s was on a train that was headed for a concentration camp. And had he stayed on that train, it would have meant certain death. He had seen something in this country, something that had ignited something within him, something that was so amazing, something that had sparked within him that thing, that chance. Through it all, through all of the hard work, he miraculously found his way on a boat to Ellis Island and worked harder than anybody. People told him no, that he was Jewish and that he couldn't do it. But he did. He became one of the most successful caterers in Brooklyn and had all of these amazing titles, but none of that mattered to him. The only titles that mattered to him was, besides hard worker, was that he was an American. He was an American. So through his eyes, I see an America where we don't limit ourselves by the ceiling of expectation. In America where anyone can be anything regardless of who you are, where you come from, how much money you have, and no matter who you love. And really, through it all, he stood by it. He stood by it, and he acknowledged that thing that was within him, that spark, that chance. And, you don't have to take my word for it or take even his word for it, because whenever you look in the news or wherever you hear about it, the longest lines in the foreign embassies are to come to our embassy so that people can get visas to come here because they see the same thing that Yankel saw. And I think it's a real shame that the people who live here, the people who were born here, don't see that. So what happened? Why do we not see that? Well, I think for one, we need to open our eyes to the history. My fellow Americans, open our eyes to the history. We've accomplished so much because we never gave up on our hopes and dreams. We sent a man to the moon. We eradicated polio and smallpox. We've made such amazing advances in medical science that the diseases of today are looking like they're not going to be the diseases of tomorrow. And we've created such amazing pieces of technology that have changed the way we communicate. And guess what? All of this didn't happen in some far-off place. This happened here in America. Where else? And if you don't believe me still, and you think that my examples are too big, I'm thinking too broad, well, let's look at what happened right here in the Berkshires. Well, Great Barrington was the birthplace of civil rights activist W.E.B. Du Bois. It was in Great Barrington that city streets were lit for the first time. And it was here in the Berkshires that one of the greatest American novels of all time, Moby Dick, was written. And it was here in the Berkshires that a group of young kids created a little thing called Project Sprout because they wanted to provide healthier foods for public schools. So they created a garden, and it still exists today. And it was here in the Berkshires that one of the most progressive female writers, Edith Wharton, made a home. And it was here in the Berkshires that the anti-Vietnam War movement was given a sound at Alice's restaurant. So if it can happen here, if it can happen for Yankel, then it can happen anywhere. This is a place where genuine opportunity lies. So still, what happened? Why are we not seeing this? Well, like I said, we need to open our eyes to the history and see America the way countless other people do, the way the people who line up to come here do. We need to embrace the fact that we all have a chance, that nothing is impossible, that we can continue to reach for the stars, that our dreams are attainable. We need to be devoting ourselves to the things that make us want to jump out of trains, the things that make us want to put everything on the line, that make us want to just take a chance because we feel that within us. You heard it earlier, something that makes us keep putting our 2 front feet forward. We can keep moving forward. So I choose to look at the history and see things the way Yankel did. Now, does America make mistakes? Yes, of course. Do we sometimes go backwards? Yes, of course. But do we ultimately move forward and make progress? I think overwhelmingly, if you look at the history, the answer is yes. It was Martin Luther King Jr. who once said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Good people always step up. Always. Always. So we can choose what kind of country we're going to see, and we can choose what kind of nation we're going to live in. Are we going to choose to be jaded by what we read on the news, what we read in the newspapers, and what we see on the news? Or are we going to choose to act like we have something to live for, to act like our lives have meanings, that our dreams are attainable, and that guess what? That we do matter. That we do matter. That's what this country is about. That's what countless other people see, and that's what Yankel saw. That's what Yankel saw. I also know that there are those who blindly spread hate and vitriol. I choose not to listen to those, and you also better believe that I choose to not listen to those who bombastically proclaim that we abandon our acceptance of diversity. Let me say, America is the way it is today because of our diversity. Because of our diversity. So we can choose what kind of country we're going to live in, and we can choose what kind of country we're going to see. I choose to see a country where we continue to make progress. We can look at the progress we've already made, and we can acknowledge how lucky we are, and that we all have a chance within us, a spark within us. So in closing, I'll share a quote with you that Yankel used to say. He used to say, "I wasn't born in America, but America was born in me. May America and its ideals live within you. May you choose to ultimately see the good in the world, and may the goodness live on within every single one of you." Thank you.